Please don't hurt me. I can't walk. Her voice cracked through the dark alley like a broken radio signal, weak, desperate, soaked in rain and fear. The streetlight above flickered like it was also scared, casting shaky shadows on the narrow, flooded alleyway. The woman sat on the cold, wet ground, one heel missing, her white suit ruined beyond redemption. Her mascara had given up long ago, racing down her cheeks like black rain. The man coming toward her looked like trouble itself. Tall, mean-looking, breathing heavily, his shirt half unbuttoned like he just walked out of a Nollywood villain audition. "Please, I beg you." She whimpered, trying to crawl backward, but her left ankle screamed louder than she did. It was twisted badly. One look and you'd know that leg wasn't working any shift tonight. Then, from the far end of the alley, a small voice broke the tension. "Daddy, is that woman dying?" Everyone froze. Even the rain paused for a second like it wanted to know the answer. A man appeared from the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, holding a small girl wearing a faded yellow raincoat and clutching a stuffed bunny that had obviously seen more life than its owner. The man's eyes were calm, but the kind that warned you, "Try nonsense, and you'll see pepper." "Stay here, Ada," he said to the little girl, setting her gently down. His voice carried that tone every Nigerian child knows means no argument. Ada nodded quickly, her big eyes following him as he stepped forward. "Guy, move away from her," the man said, his voice low and deadly calm. The thug blinked, sizing him up. "And who you be? Someone you don't want to know on a bad day," he replied, his lips barely curving. The man chuckled nervously, spat to the side, then saw something in the stranger's eyes that made him rethink his career choices. Without a word, he backed off slowly, then disappeared into the dark corner like the coward he was. The woman stared, dazed. Her chest rose and fell fast. The stranger approached and knelt beside her, the rain dripping off his hair onto his worn jacket. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "Don't worry, nobody's touching you." Her lips trembled, but no words came out. She just nodded weakly. His name was Emmanuel Emma Cole, a single father with a face that had seen life's ups, downs, and potholes. At 33, he'd stopped expecting surprises from life, until tonight. He lived in a half-dead apartment building in Surulere, where the walls were older than his dreams. Paint peeled like yam skin, the roof leaked when it rained, and the landlord's "I'll fix it next week" had been running since 2021. Emma once wore a firefighter's uniform, a rescuer, a hero. But life happened. A collapsing building took his partner, and a hospital bill took his savings. Then cancer took his wife. That one broke him completely. Now he fixed washing machines for a living, grease under his nails, detergent smell on his clothes, and exhaustion as his daily breakfast. But he didn't complain much. As long as his daughter Ada smiled, he could fight the world. Ada, his 6-year-old rainbow in human form, had inherited her mother's eyes and her father's stubbornness. She painted everything, their wall, her lunchbox, even the landlord's gate once. "Colours make sad things happy," she always said. That night, Emma had promised her a meat pie from the junction if she behaved during grocery shopping. They were almost home when they heard the scream. At first, he thought it was a drunk woman or maybe a street fight, but that voice carried something else. Real fear, the kind that made your heart jump before your brain did. So he followed it, and now here they were. The woman, later he'd learn her name was Favor Williams, looked nothing like the type you'd find in an alley at 10:30 p.m. Her diamond earrings were still hanging on for dear life. Her wristwatch probably cost more than his entire rent for 10 years. And that suit? Pure luxury. Or it was before the rain baptized it. Emma carried her in silence. She was light, but she held tightly onto a silver laptop like it contained her soul. Rain dripped down his face as he trudged through the narrow street. When they reached his apartment, Ada ran ahead, opening the creaky door. Emma laid Favor gently on the old brown couch, the one that complained loudly whenever anyone sat. "You're safe now," he said again, more softly this time. She looked up at him, eyes wide, shivering like a soaked kitten. Ada peeked from behind the door, still hugging her bunny. Her voice was small. "Daddy, why is she crying like you do when you miss Mummy?" The question sliced the room open. Emma froze. Favor's lips parted and tears slipped down her cheeks again. Not from pain this time. She turned away quickly, pressing her palm over her mouth. Emma swallowed hard, forced a smile. She's just had a hard night, my princess. Sometimes adults cry too for different things. Ada nodded thoughtfully, then tiptoed off, her rain boots squeaking like small drums. Emma fetched a towel, knelt beside Favour, and wrapped it around her shoulders. You need something warm. Tea? She nodded weakly, her voice barely there. Thank you. He stood, walking to the kitchen that smelled faintly of beans and engine oil. As the kettle hissed, his mind wandered. Who was she really? What happened to her? And why did she hold that laptop like her life depended on it? He didn't know it yet, but he knew something serious was going on with her. The next day, Favour woke up in a strange room with a low ceiling and peeling walls that looked like they had survived a war and were still recovering. The faint smell of fried oil, Dettol, and ginger tea mixed together like confused roommates in the air. She blinked hard, unsure where she was. Her ankle throbbed, her hair was a mess, and she was wrapped in a blanket that definitely didn't smell like a five-star hotel. For someone who had spent the last 5 years hopping from one glass penthouse to another, this was new. Then it hit her. She was still in his place, Emmanuel's apartment. The rugged stranger with calm eyes and a mysterious silence that carried weight heavier than her boardroom decisions. The couch she'd been sleeping on was old but clean. A cartoon drawing of a girl and her superdad hung on the fridge, done in crayon. A cracked floor tile near the sink winked at her as if to say, "Welcome to the real world, Madam CEO." Her laptop was beside her, still half open like a loyal pet that refused to leave her side. She stared at it, guilt punching her chest. She had barged into a stranger's life, disturbed his peace, and now she was squatting on his couch like a lost soul. She decided to leave quietly. No thanks, no goodbye. Just disappear, like she'd never been there. Her ankle protested as she stood up, but she ignored it. She limped toward the door, only to stop halfway. Her shoes, once muddy, torn and embarrassing, were now sitting neatly by the door. Clean, dry, patched up with neat, careful stitches. Beside them lay a folded towel and a note written in a firm, slightly crooked hand. "Your foot's not better yet. Stay, it's fine." Favour stood there for a long minute, staring at the note. No conditions, no expectations, no send your account number. Just kindness. Genuine, uncalculated kindness. Something she hadn't felt in a very long time. She sank back to the couch, holding the note like it was gold. For years, she'd fought her way to the top, boardrooms, betrayals, fake smiles, and lonely champagne toasts. But in this tiny, imperfect apartment, surrounded by cartoon drawings and the faint whistle of a kettle, she felt something she couldn't name. Peace, maybe, or home. Morning came with the smell of ginger, the soft clatter of pots, and the sound of a kettle whistling like an overexcited teacher. For a second, Ava thought she was back in her penthouse, the one where her cook prepared breakfast before her yoga class. But then she opened her eyes and saw reality. The tiny kitchen, the flickering bulb, and Emmanuel, barefoot, stirring something on the stove. He turned just as she tried to sit up. "You're awake," he said simply, walking over with a steaming mug. The smell hit her first, sharp, hot, and medicinal. She wrinkled her nose. "What's this? Engine oil?" He smirked. "Ginger tea. It's not poison. Drink it. It'll help with the pain." She took a sip, then hissed. "God, this thing can burn demons." He chuckled softly, pulling a chair closer. "That's how you know it's working." She eyed him. "You made this yourself?" "Old habit," he said, reaching for a roll of bandage. "Clean water, steady hands, and small faith. That's all you need sometimes." Before she could argue, he lifted her injured foot onto his lap. His hands were rough but gentle, like someone who knew the difference between hurting and healing. He cleaned the wound, replaced the bandage, and said nothing for a while. Just focused, steady movements. Favour watched him closely. There was something about his calm, like he'd seen chaos and made peace with it. "You've done this before," she said quietly. He nodded. "Fire service? Accidents, disasters. You learn to stay calm even when your world's burning." She swallowed hard. "And now?" He shrugged. "Now? I just fix things that don't scream too loud." Her heart twisted a little. There was sadness there, tucked neatly under that rugged exterior. She tried to lighten the mood. "You know, for a man who lives in a room smaller than my wardrobe, you're surprisingly efficient." He raised an eyebrow. "And for a woman who nearly fainted on my doormat, you talk too much." She burst into laughter, the sound echoing through the tiny apartment. For a second, it felt like she wasn't the CEO of anything, just a woman with a throbbing ankle and a stranger who made her laugh. Then came the pitter-patter of small feet. A tiny girl with wild curls and sleepy eyes appeared from the hallway, clutching a crayon drawing. Her pyjamas were full of stars. "Good morning, Daddy," she chirped. "Morning, Ada," Emmanuel replied, smiling faintly. Ada's eyes landed on Favor. "Oh, you're still here! I thought you ran away in the night like Cinderella." Favor blinked. "Why would I run away?" Ada shrugged. "People who look sad always run. My teacher said so." Emmanuel tried to hide a smile, but Ada was already marching forward, thrusting the crayon paper at Favor. "This is for you," she said proudly. Favor took it. On the page was a drawing, a tall man, a little girl with big hair, and beside them a woman's outline filled halfway in purple. Favor frowned, confused. "Who's this?" Ada pointed. "That's you. I was waiting for who would fit there. I think it's you now." For a second, Favor forgot how to breathe. Her eyes stung. "Why me?" she whispered. Ada gave a little shrug, like it was the simplest answer in the world. "Because you look like somebody who needs people." Favor let out a soft laugh that cracked halfway into a sob. Emmanuel looked away, pretending to fix a spoon that didn't need fixing. Favor hugged the drawing to her chest, her voice trembling. "Thank you, Ada. That's the kindest thing anyone's ever given me." Ada grinned. "Then I'll finish it. Purple dress, right?" Favor nodded through her tears. "Yes, purple's perfect." And as the little girl began colouring with wild, determined strokes, Favor felt something shift deep inside her, something she hadn't felt in years. Not power, not pride, just belonging. She looked up at Emmanuel, who stood quietly by the door, watching. His eyes said nothing and everything at once. In that tiny apartment with one flickering bulb and laughter bouncing off the walls, Favor Williams, the once untouchable CEO, felt something she had never known in all her glass-towered life. She felt seen, and for the first time in years, she didn't want to leave. Favor's ankle was healing, slowly, but at least it was no longer trying to kill her with pain. Each morning came with less limping and more sass. Still, she hated feeling weak. For a woman who once commanded 500 employees with one email, needing help to climb a 3-step staircase was an insult. But Emmanuel never treated her like a burden. He didn't hover. He didn't act like a hero. He just showed up. Whenever she tried to walk, he'd quietly offer his arm. No pity, no sermon, just calm, steady presence. Small, Madam CEO, he'd tease with a smirk. Na leg, not wings. One step at a time. And she would roll her eyes but obey, muttering under her breath, "You talk too much for a man that barely smiles." Their mornings became a rhythm. Step, breathe, balance. Sometimes she stumbled, sometimes she hissed, but Emmanuel was always there, solid as a wall, a quiet wall that somehow smelled like soap and engine oil. One sunny Saturday morning, Ada burst into the living room like a tiny hurricane with messy hair. "Daddy, it's Saturday Pancake Day," she announced like it was a national holiday. Emmanuel groaned. You want to scatter my kitchen again?" Ada ignored him and turned to Favor. "Auntie Favor, you can cook, right?" Favor blinked. "Cook?" Ada folded her small arms. "Don't tell me you don't know how to fry pancake. Even me, I can do it." Favor laughed awkwardly. I don't actually cook. Not even toast." The child gasped like she had just confessed to murder. "You mean in your whole big life you've never boiled egg?" Favor shook her head, embarrassed. "No." Emmanuel smirked. "That one shocked me too. So all those photos you people post online with breakfast tray by the window, nah lie?" "Excuse you," she said, feigning offence. "That was room service," he burst into laughter. "This woman, today we go correct that mistake. You must fry something, if you like, even if it burns." And so the cold pancake war began. Ada stood on a stool, acting like the self-proclaimed kitchen supervisor. "Not too much milk, Daddy. Auntie, stir it slowly. No lumps." "Yes, Chef Ada," Emmanuel replied, saluting playfully. The kitchen was chaos. Batter splashed everywhere. Favor's hair was coated with flour, and the cracked ceramic bowl on the counter looked like it was about to resign from duty. The first pancake stuck to the pan like bad luck. The second folded like letter paper. The third one, oh, that one burnt. A small smoke cloud rose, and the smoke alarm coughed in protest. "Jesus!" Favor jumped back, fanning the air. Emmanuel grabbed the pan, shaking his head with a grin. "Madam, you want burn my house? Ada was laughing so hard she nearly fell off the chair. Auntie Favour, your pancakes like black akara! Favour looked at the burnt blob and shrugged. Fine, maybe I'll start a new business, Charcoal Pancake Express. They all laughed, genuine, unfiltered laughter that filled the little kitchen like sunshine on Harmattan morning. When they finally sat down to eat, the pancakes were a disaster. Uneven, burnt, half raw. But Ada proudly declared, "These are Dorky pancakes! But Dorky is good!" Favour chuckled, shaking her head. "You're such a weird child." Ada smiled, syrup all over her lips. "That's what Daddy says too." For a few golden minutes it felt like time paused. The noise of Lagos traffic outside faded into the background. The world, with all its madness, seemed to hold its breath just for them. Then Ada said it. With the casual boldness of a child who doesn't understand how heavy words can be, she smiled and said, "I told my teacher that Auntie Favour might be my new mummy." The fork in Favour's hand froze midair. She looked at Emmanuel. He didn't flinch. He just calmly reached for the syrup and poured more on Ada's plate. Favour wanted to speak, but nothing came out. A weird warmth bloomed in her chest, a feeling both terrifying and safe. That night, after Ada had fallen asleep surrounded by her stuffed animals and school books, Favour and Emmanuel sat quietly on the couch. The TV was off, the city lights blinked through the window, and the hum of distant traffic filled the silence. Favour's ankle rested on the pillow beside her. She was tired, but her heart felt full. Without thinking, she leaned her head on Emmanuel's shoulder. He didn't move, didn't speak, just breathed slowly, his heartbeat steady beneath her cheek. "You don't know what you've done," she whispered. He tilted his head slightly. "What have I done?" "You've saved me," she said softly. "From myself, from everything." He exhaled through his nose, a quiet sound that was almost a laugh. "I didn't save anyone, I just saw a woman who needed help, that's all." His words hit her harder than she expected. No performance, no ego, just truth. She smiled faintly. "You're annoyingly humble, you know that?" He chuckled. "And you're annoyingly dramatic." Touché! But their peace didn't last long. It began with a phone ringing in the hallway, then a buzz, then a knock. A loud, impatient corporate knock. Favour froze. Emmanuel peeked up the curtain and cursed softly. "What?" She whispered. "Black SUV. 2 cameras, 1 woman in high heels that can kill. I think your people have found you." Her stomach dropped. Within minutes, the street outside was crawling with reporters and legal reps. Someone shouted her name. A camera flash lit the window. Ada's small voice came from the bedroom, trembling. "Daddy, why are there people outside?" "It's okay, my love," Favour said, forcing a smile. "They're just confused people looking for direction." Emmanuel stayed by the door, arms folded like a security guard. "Don't worry, they won't get in." Hours later, when the noise finally died down, Favour's phone buzzed again. A message from her board. "The company collapses without you. Please come back." All she had to do was smile for the cameras and act like she'd never fallen apart. She stared at the message, her fingers trembling. Then she quietly closed the laptop. Emmanuel was drying dishes, pretending not to watch her. "I'm not going back," she said. He turned slowly. "You sure?" "Yes, they're offering me millions, but I'd be broke again where it matters." He leaned against the counter. "And where does it matter?" She smiled faintly. "Here, where I actually feel like a human being." He nodded once. "Then that settles it." By morning they were on the road. Emmanuel packed Ada and Favour into his old truck that roared like a generator on a bad day. They drove past the city chaos, past hawkers waving gala and pure water, past billboard faces of people who smiled for money but never laughed for real. They drove until the road grew quiet and the trees started whispering again. Finally, they reached a small farmhouse tucked between tall palm trees and red earth. An elderly woman stood on the veranda, wiping her hands on her wrapper. Emmanuel's mother, Mama Cole. She looked at Favour from head to toe and said, "So this is the big madam we've been hearing about. You look hungry." Favour opened her mouth to respond, but Mama Cole cut her off. "There's warm bread in the oven and stew on the fire. Go inside before Breeze carries you away." Favour laughed, the sound shaky but free. "Yes, Ma." For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like Favour Williams, the CEO everyone wanted to control. She just felt like Favour, a woman who'd finally found somewhere she didn't have to perform to belong. And as the sun dipped behind the trees, Emmanuel looked at her through the rearview mirror and smiled. "Welcome home, Madam Pancake." She rolled her eyes. "You'll never let that go, will you?" "Never," he said simply. "Some memories are worth keeping." Favour Williams sat beside Emmanuel. The cool evening breeze carried the scent of roasted corn and distant laughter. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe. "I used to think I had everything," she said quietly, watching the stars blink like gossiping eyes. "Money, fame, board meetings, even a driver that opened the door before I blinked. But it was all noise, empty noise." Emmanuel didn't say a word. He just took a slow sip from his steaming cup of Lipton, the kind brewed with more firewood smoke than water. "They only saw your name," he said at last, his voice low and rough. "Not you." She looked at him, slightly surprised. "Exactly. That's exactly it." A moment of silence stretched between them. Somewhere Ada Cole's laughter echoed faintly from the backyard as she chased fireflies with the neighbour's goat watching like a judge. Then Emma asked, "So, that man we been dey shout your name at road, we dey charge at you that day, what's his story? You look like you saw your ancestors." Favour exhaled deeply, a bitter smile curling on her lips. "That man, his name is Henry Lawson, the nightmare my parents almost gave me as a husband." Emmanuel blinked. "Wait, you mean your folks wanted to marry you off like Suya?" Favour laughed bitterly. "Something like that. Before my parents died in that car accident, they made some kind of agreement with the Lawsons. Their son, Henry, would marry me and our families would merge businesses. I didn't even know about it until after the funeral, when those people came to my office like they owned me." She shifted on the step, her eyes darkening with memory. "Henry came swaggering in one day, suit sharper than his sense, waving a bunch of papers at me. He said I should sign and fulfill my father's wish." She scoffed. "I told him I'm not tomato to be passed from one hand to another. Next thing, he started shouting like market woman." Emmanuel chuckled. "Typical Lagos man, when you refuse him, you become the problem." "Exactly," Favour continued, animated now. "I refused to sign anything. I started investigating, and what did I find? Their company was crumbling. They didn't want me. They wanted my father's empire to rescue them from drowning." She paused, looking out at the moon. "I stood my ground. I wasn't about to let my father's legacy die in greedy hands. But that's when the real drama started." Emmanuel leaned forward, interested. "I dey hear you, madam. Continue." "One afternoon, my board called for an emergency meeting at one fancy hotel in Victoria Island. I thought it was about the new merger proposal. I didn't know it was a setup." Her voice dropped. "When I entered the hall, it wasn't my board waiting. It was the Lawsons and their goons. Henry was there, smiling like a villain in cheap movies. He dropped the papers in front of me and said, 'Sign now or you won't leave here alive.'" Emma whistled. "Jesu." "I swear, I almost signed from shock, but one of my loyal directors whispered, 'Run,' and that was exactly what I did. I grabbed my laptop and ran barefoot through that hotel corridor like a mad woman. Security guards were chasing me. Henry was shouting, 'Stop her!'" She laughed at herself. Me, the great Favour Williams, CEO of Williams Holdings, running through a 5-star hotel with one heel and broken wig. If they had posted on Instagram, I would have trended. Emmanuel laughed so hard his tea nearly spilled. "Madam, I for like see that video. CEO, we'd on turn Usain Bolt." Favour joined in the laughter until her eyes softened again. "But that's when you showed up, Emma. You didn't even know who I was, yet you stood between me and that monster. You gave me a ride, even though you didn't have fuel." He grinned. "I beg, that car'n a miracle car. Sometimes east start by grace, not key." Favour smiled, her tone now gentler. "You saved me, Emmanuel. I don't even know what would have happened that night if you didn't show up." He shrugged. "No, God save you through me. Besides, Ada would have never forgiven me if she found out I ignored a woman running from trouble." They both laughed quietly, and for a moment the pain hanging between them eased. The wind whistled softly through the mango trees and the stars looked brighter. Favour finally said, "The case is still under investigation. I've handed over everything to the authorities, but until I'm sure they're behind bars, I can't go back home. Besides, I found my peace here." Emmanuel nodded slowly. "Then you're safe here for now. My daughter may talk too much, but she'll keep your secret." From inside the house, Ada's small voice shouted, Daddy, tell Auntie to stop forming fine girl and come eat beans before I finish it. Favour burst into laughter, shaking her head. Your daughter is something else. Emma smiled. That one. She no dey fear anybody. She even told the pastor last Sunday that his sermon was too long. Favour laughed again, her laughter ringing through the night like healing. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like the wounded CEO running for her life. She felt like a woman rediscovering herself under a humble sky, with a man who didn't care about her name, only her heart. 2 weeks later, the glass doors of Williams Holdings swung open like they were expecting royalty. For months, the entire company had been whispering, waiting, hoping that their CEO, Favour Williams, would one day return. And today, she did. Her black SUV rolled into the parking lot, polished enough to reflect the morning sun. Out stepped Favour, dressed in a sharp suit that screamed class and confidence. But beside her, walking with easy pride in a neatly pressed shirt and chinos, was Emmanuel Cole, the rugged man who once fixed generators for a living and now looked like he belonged in the headlines. The security men saluted sharply. The receptionist gasped. Someone whispered, "It's really her!" And before long, the news spread like wildfire. Madam Favour Don come back. As they walked through the hallway, staff members stood from their desks, clapping and smiling. Phones came out for quick pictures. Someone even shouted, "Madam, we miss your shouting!" And laughter broke out. Favour grinned. "Don't worry, I'll start again on Monday." When she and Emmanuel entered the boardroom, the applause was thunderous. Every board member rose to their feet, some even wiping tears. The room was decorated with white and gold ribbons, and a big banner hung at the back that read, "Welcome back, CEO Favour Williams. The Lioness returns." One of the directors, Mr. Phillip, walked forward, barely holding his emotions. "Madam, we never thought we'd see this day. The company hasn't been the same without you." Favour smiled, but her eyes glistened. She looked around the table, at the same faces that had once betrayed her, and at the loyal few who stood by her. "Well," she said with a playful tone, "I told you people I'm not that easy to kill." Laughter filled the room. Then her expression softened. "Before anything else," she began, "I want to say justice has been served. Henry Lawson has been arrested and charged with assault, attempted blackmail, and corporate fraud. His so-called empire has collapsed. And for once, the truth won." A roar of applause filled the air. The board members banged their tables in excitement. Favour took a deep breath and turned slightly toward Emmanuel, who stood humbly at the back, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. "But there's something more important than revenge or victory," she said. "It's gratitude." The room fell silent. "I would have been dead," she continued softly, "if not for this man standing right here. A man who didn't know my name, my money, or my story, but gave me a second chance at life. When the whole world turned their back on me, Emmanuel Cole and his daughter Ada opened their door." Emmanuel rubbed his neck awkwardly. "Ah, Madam, a beg. No, they do like this. I just..." Favour smiled. "No, let me finish. You saved me when I was broken. You saw Favour the woman, not Favour the CEO, and because of that I'm standing here today." Her voice shook slightly. "This company owes its survival to your courage, Emma. And to Ada, who taught me that family isn't only by blood." The room erupted into cheers. The staff clapped wildly, some even whistled. "Emma! Emma! Emma!" they chanted. Emmanuel's ears turned red. "Una go make person fainto," he muttered, half smiling. Favour laughed and motioned for him to step forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said proudly, "I present to you Mr. Emmanuel Cole." The applause nearly lifted the roof. Cameras flashed. Ada, who had been sitting quietly in a corner with a big ribbon in her hair, jumped up and ran to hug her father. "Daddy, they're clapping for you," she shouted, grinning ear to ear. Emmanuel laughed, lifting her up. "You see your handwork, Anne? You made me popular." Favour joined in the laughter, tears of joy shining in her eyes. "You both deserve this moment," she said softly. As the crowd continued cheering, she glanced at Emmanuel, and for a brief second their eyes locked. The same silent understanding that had begun on that small porch under the stars flickered again between them. This time, she didn't look away. Weeks rolled into months, and Favour Williams, formerly the Iron Lady of Williams Holdings, was no longer buried under board meetings and press conferences alone. Instead, she poured her heart into something she'd only whispered about back when life was still all glitz and chaos. She called it the Ada Haven, named after the little girl who had unknowingly rescued her spirit. It was a foundation for women who had been silenced, betrayed, or thrown away by society. Women who, like her, had once been powerful but broken, women who deserved a second chance at life. When Emmanuel first heard the name, he raised an eyebrow. "Why Ada Haven?" he asked, holding his cup of Zobo like it was holy water. Favor smiled. "Because Ada said something that stuck with me. Mummy Favor, flowers don't grow where people shout too much. She's right. People grow better when they feel safe." Emmanuel chuckled. "That one where you call flower no day even keep quiet for 1 minute." Favor grinned. "That's exactly why she inspired it." It started in a grand style. The governor's wife's attention was drawn to it immediately after reading Favor's story in the papers. Emma helped put things in order. He designed software and helped paint the walls himself, even though he grumbled the whole time. "Ah, madam, if I had known paint day stubborn like this, I for stay inside and fry plantain." She laughed, rolling paint on the wall beside him. "Relax, rugged man. You're doing great. I like a man who knows how to hold a brush." He looked at her, smirking. "Em? You want to turn me to your decorator now?" Favor rolled her eyes. "Don't flatter yourself. You're just cheap labour." Ada burst out laughing from the doorway. "Daddy, Mummy Favor is roasting you again!" The three of them painted, argued, danced to old songs, and sometimes fought over who spilled paint on the dog. They slowly transformed the building into a sanctuary, a place where broken women could remember how to smile again. Months later, the Ada Haven officially opened. The crowd was massive. Women in Ankara, children chasing balloons, journalists snapping pictures, and an MC who was definitely enjoying the microphone too much. Favor stood on stage in a bright yellow dress that glowed like morning sunshine. Emma stood beside her in a clean native outfit Ada forced him to wear. "Daddy, you must look fine for Mummy's event," she'd said. When the microphone came to Favor, her voice trembled slightly. "I used to think success was about titles, property, and the number of people who stood when I entered a room. But the truth is, none of that ever gave me peace. I had power, but I was lonely. I had wealth, but I was broken. Then I met two people who reminded me that love doesn't have to be earned, it can simply be given." She paused, her eyes finding Emma and Ada in the crowd. "This man and his daughter took me in when I had nothing but fear and a sprained ankle. They didn't see Favor the CEO, they saw Favor the woman. Because of them, I'm standing here today, not as a survivor, but as someone reborn." The audience erupted in applause. Ada shouted from the front row, "Tell them, Mummy!" And everyone laughed. Emma tried to hide his face, muttering, "This girl no get shame again." Favor smiled through tears. The Ada Haven is for every woman who has ever been told she's not enough. Here, you don't need to beg for love or safety. You just need to show up, and we'll take it from there. The cheers were deafening. Cameras flashed. Emma squeezed Ada's hand and whispered, "That woman is dangerous. If she contests election tomorrow, I'll vote." Ada giggled. "You like her, Daddy?" Emma gave her a look. "Behave yourself, young lady!" Later that night, when Ada had fallen asleep surrounded by crayons and soft snores, Emma stepped onto the balcony where Favor stood, wrapped in her shawl. The city below glimmered like melted stars. "I have something for you," he said, awkwardly rubbing the back of his neck. He handed her a small beaded bracelet, slightly crooked, full of mismatched colours. "She made it," he said quietly. "Ada, she called it her commitment bracelet. Said it's not a wedding ring, but if you wear it, it means you're part of the family. Officially." Favor laughed softly, tears welling up. "She's unbelievable. She gets it from her mother," Emma said, eyes soft. Favor looked up at him, then slowly slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. It fit perfectly. "For the first time," she whispered, "I feel like I was chosen, not for what I have, but for who I am." Emma smiled, leaning against the rail. "Welcome home then, madam." She smiled back. "Don't call me madam, just Favor." He chuckled. "Then stop calling me rugged man." "Never," she said, grinning. A year later, they got married in a quiet garden ceremony filled with flowers Ada helped plant herself. No paparazzi, No flashy billionaires, just real people, laughter and love. They moved into one of Favor's mansions, a big house that no longer felt empty. The sound of Ada's laughter bounced off the walls. Emma's deep voice hummed through the corridors. And every morning, Favor woke up with the same peaceful thought. She wasn't running anymore. She was home. Because family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one that found you when you had nothing left to give. And for Favor Williams, the wounded CEO who once ruled from glass towers, love didn't come wrapped in diamonds or contracts. It came in the form of a man who fixed generators, a little girl who drew stick figures, and a beaded bracelet that reminded her that she was finally beautifully chosen. Hello, beautiful viewers. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Favor Williams, the wounded CEO on the run. This story reminds us that sometimes life has to break us before it can rebuild us. Favor lost everything, her title, her wealth, her power, but in the middle of that storm, she found what truly mattered. Love, peace, and a family that chose her not for what she had, but for who she was, and still recovered everything that they steal from her. Moral lessons. True strength isn't in power or money, it's in kindness and forgiveness. You don't have to be perfect to be loved, you just have to be real. Helping others heal is one of the best ways to heal yourself. And lastly, sometimes God hides your blessing in the most unexpected people. Call to action. If you enjoyed this emotional journey, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on your notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter. Tell us in the comments, what part of Favor's story touched your heart the most? And remember, no matter how broken you feel, your story isn't over yet. See you in the next episode, my beautiful people. Bye for now.